Bring a Trailer podcast.
Lutz, some early ones.
Oh, Lutz and Rahal. Those are good.
Courtney Cutchin, Peter Cunningham.
Leno was what number?
I'm trying to count.
It was
and I
about
keep
10,
losing it.
maybe. Something like that. It was early, though.
We had some heat in the early ones, right?
do.
Some of these names, I was like, why are these people talking to us in this format? I thought it was hilarious. It still kind of is on some level. But anyway, some of those folks that came out of anytime you get Lutz on a recorded line, I thought that was terrific.
21 was Jay Leno.
Episode 21.
Yes.
Wow.
Sadly followed up by me after.
Took a little while.
Steve Dinan was interesting.
Steve
Oh,
Dinan.
yeah. See, there's a great one.
I want to hear the Spencer Trenery redo episode with you and him in Amsterdam in a few months, Howard.
Oh, Sludjo was early on, too.
When did we get
Yes.
him?
Sludjo's episode 5.
That was awesome. We ought to have him back. It's been 95
It has been.
mile markers.
Yep. This is 2021. So this is like Feb, March of 21.
Get a podcast in COVID. That's what everybody did.
It's what everybody did. Totally.
I love it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bring a Trailer podcast. We have a special episode today. This is our 100th podcast. I'm joined here in Bring a Trailer HQ by Zach and Randy, and remotely by Howard. How are you, gentlemen?
It's episode 100 if you don't count the ones we threw in the garbage way early on.
If you don't count the Hannah Elliott one that I had to do twice because I didn't know how to use the recording equipment.
Admitting that on the air, Randy.
For sure.
We had a
Just-
Maserati MC20 debacle one that got trashed. Yeah, there's some bloopers around.
Oh, man, that's great. Actually, maybe that's a great place to start. I know we talked about this, Zach, but you and I and Patrick did try to do a BaT podcast way back in the day.
Yeah, we
Before-
teased it when we were talking Camry Soloras a couple weeks ago with Patrick.
That's right. And they were too crappy to see the light of day. Is that right?
And then we just sold one for $17,500.
I saw that at Vert.
When was this? Because this current form of our podcast started in what year? You said 2020, 2021.
21.
And so when you guys were messing around in like the old office or whatever, that was when?
17 version
Oh,
1.0.
man. Were podcasts even invented then? That's a long time ago.
Well, Zach is a big podcast champion and a big podcast listener. He turned me on to them, and it was the first podcast I ever listened to was Smoking Tire when Matt Farah was live casting the sale of his DeLorean on BaT. That was
There
the
you
first
go.
podcast I ever listened to.
I'd
And it
go
got me
back
hooked.
and listen to that.
It's fun. But you were the one. You were the plug for that, Zach, for me, and then you also were just kind of a big podcast fan, and must have been. I mean, you were the impetus behind the ones that didn't.
Long, painful commute turns everyone into a podcast fan.
Then Zach told Joe Rogan to start a podcast,
Yeah.
and the rest is sort of history.
Totally.
I said, I have to commute across the Bay Bridge both ways, so I need 3 hours of listening.
Yeah, 3
a day.
miles. I
Yeah.
need to go 3 miles, and it's going to take me an hour and a half.
He's like, I know this little company called Spotify. Let me see if I can broker a deal.
No, Zach was definitely an early champion of us doing a BaT one, and we had the bright idea to fire that up. I think that was Feb 21 was the first episode, me and Randy. I was terrible. Randy was very media ready, so he was awesome. I think I required some editing and other takes.
We didn't know how to edit. I think 100% of your words went straight to the recording on that one. But yeah, episode 1, people get that's still available somewhere, right? You
100%.
can still go out and find that stuff.
You can find that right on our own website.
And look how media ready we all are now.
Totally. Did you guys talk about that or plan at all, or was it just completely? I don't even know the story of how this all came to be. How did you guys decide to do that first one?
I think it's a little bit of for the first one, it's a little bit of a check 1, 2 to see if this even happens or works or what does it sound like. And then we ended up just publishing it, right? Because we're not going to just flush it after that effort. But Howard and I like riffing, right? The sort of culture in the office when early days when it was just he and I, but even now with a bunch of people has always been just kind of calling it like you see it, right? Wasn't that what we were talking about? I mean, we just started talking about a couple cars on the site and take it from there.
I think for folks that may have only started tuning into the podcast in the last year may not realize, one, just how awful our production quality was for the podcast in the early episodes, but also like how awesome some of the guests were. We were pretty ragtag podcast crew, honestly, recording on our MacBooks, if I recall correctly. We had Mr. Bob Lutz, who's an absolute all-star. We had Graham Rahal. That was fun. Steve Dinan, Jay Leno, all sorts of characters.
Reeves Callaway, can't leave him out of that group.
These guys were all buying and selling on BAT. And when we knocked on their door and said, hey, we're recording a podcast, they're like, yeah, of course.
That's great.
And I was always kind of like, why are you saying yes to this idea? I was like the skeptic, but it's super fun now. It's still fun to go and listen to those. And those conversations turned into more conversations. And we kind of came up with some fun new format.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you liked riffing with each other. And I remember listening to those early episodes and cackling because it felt like being in the office. And this is all during the pandemic. So we're all stuck at home. We hadn't gotten to hang out in a long time. And so it was really fun listening to you and Howard chop it up. It felt like being back at the office. It was really, really nice.
My biggest gaffe, I emailed a big time automotive CEO, a CEO of a manufacturer. I was all pumped. He said, great, I'd love to do it. Told Randy, we got this guy locked and loaded. We're doing it Tuesday afternoon. He's pumped. He thinks I'm so great. I lined this big guest up. We sign on to what we thought was the podcast. It's a couple assistants there, no CEO. And we said, okay, let's do this. And they said, no, this is the meeting to schedule the podcast. And basically he's booked for the next 12 months, but that was next year. And I was like, oh. So Randy quickly.
Still have never gotten him.
They said,
I don't think that ever.
Howard,
we're still
moved
Carlos Ghosn is gone.
Yeah, Ghosn was not going to turn out to be available.
Oh man,
that was funny.
You guys kind of split interview duty early on. Howard, you interviewed some of these kind of notable folks in the automotive world. Randy, you interviewed some of our power users. Sludjo, a fan favorite, was an early one. Captain, my captain. You want to talk about those a little bit?
I love the Captain, my captain. I mean, I loved all of those, but I love the reason to exist for the BAT podcast. I was kind of like, yeah, the depths of the community, like, hey, who's on BAT, right? Some of these big names we started talking about. It's interesting to know that those people are lurking around. Like right now, today on a Wednesday on BAT, there's like CEOs and like big car names. But obviously there's also these sort of big BAT names, meaning community members that everybody sees, comment and talk and maybe even buy and sell. And they're all out there. So I really thought, you can hear Lutz on a podcast. You can hear Leno on some other podcast or his own or whatever. But some of these, I mean, Captain, my captain on, like, where are you going to find this dude?
One place.
And first of all, there's so many questions you could ask these people, like, who the heck are you? Like, why are you on BAT? Like, pontificating and like where does this come from? So it was kind of fun to be exploratory with those individuals and be like, where'd you grow up, dude? Like why do you care about these cars and why are you who you are? And I'm just so appreciative of getting their time and people that dig in on BAT and have cool things to say and contribute. So to get to ask the backstory and figure that out, I thought was really cool. And yeah, so Captain, my captain, and then Sludjo is just sort of a big name, household name on BAT. And so getting him to tell some of his story, a lot of people really liked that because he's very talented with the written word, but getting the guy to like talk and open up and interact in that way is not how people usually hear from him. So yeah, the ability to do that. I still have a list, man. I have a list. It makes me think that maybe we didn't do enough of those. Like maybe we should find some more of those and we should hear from people's suggestion on who that ought to be.
We need to dig that up. And then Howard, you also, there's kind of a third kind of interview you guys did early on, which was, I guess these are kind of a mix between power seller and automotive power celebrities. And that was some of our kind of power users. So we had Matt Crandall from Avant-Garde really early on, your buddy Spencer from Fantasy, and a couple other notable folks too. Anything that was memorable about talking to some of those folks? They're also people you don't get to hear from very often.
Yeah, some of these guys are doing some of the rounds in media and podcasts, so they're very high quality. Steve Serio, user Feminod, was on here. I would love to have him back. He's got lots of opinions and lots of hot takes. That was like 2 or 3 years ago now. I really enjoyed the pod we did with Miles Collier. Not really a guy you'll hear on many automotive podcasts. He had written a book, and he's just a super intellectual guy and loves all sorts of things about automobiles and history and all sorts of stuff. So that's worth a listen. That's in the archives.
That was a great one. I remember listening to that. I was just a fan of the pod. Like I was a fan of the website for many years before I worked here, and I loved listening to you guys. But eventually you did bring somebody else in, and that was Zach. Zach, do you remember how your first appearance happened? It was maybe 20 episodes in, something like that.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know. They heard me like begging and pounding at the door or something and finally let me in and chat about my automotive experiences that year. I think it was post a road trip in a certain car.
But we were all still remote, right? There was no studio or anything.
No, we definitely did it in person.
Oh,
Which
really?
now the statute of limitations is way past.
Okay.
Yeah, City of San Francisco can't send me to jail for that, right?
You guys were just like coughing on each other.
Yeah, exactly. Well, major inside baseball. I think Howard had already given me coronavirus by then, so I had the antibodies and I could come in and record. That's probably how it came together.
Was that your first time on a podcast ever?
No, remember you and I did the Clutch Kick podcast in like 16 or 17,
Right.
which there's no way that
Is
SEO
probably-
still exists.
I'm sure that has been erased from the internet.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. But I think we've done a few other kind of random ragtag ones. I did the Overcrest podcast. I've done a few here and there.
I
You
did
did Overcrest.
Mustang.
That's pretty solid.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. Those guys are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say about a Mustang, Howard?
I did the Ford Mustang, the early years podcast a year or two ago. That was a good one.
What on earth was that? I missed
I
that.
don't know that one either.
BaT fan, guy who talks about Mustangs and wanted to hear what we had to say about the Mustang market and our
I love
interest in that stuff. Yeah, that's
How have
that's
your
a beauty.
opinions
It's out
on the
there
Mustang
somewhere.
market shifted since you've been on that podcast, Howard? You want to give us a little market update?
Howard
Yeah,
actually is
totally.
the only one in this circle that owns
Yes, that's
a
right.
Mustang.
That's not true.
That's actually not true. But I realized that as I said it. But hold on. Howard Swig
Randy is the one that owns a Mustang.
owns or co-owns a Mustang. Am I right?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot you were now a renewed Mustang owner. That's awesome.
Randy forgot to.
And this actually prompts an interesting question. You, Randy, and Howard, to a large extent, you too, you guys have both appeared in lots of media. You guys are asked to speak. You're asked to give quotes to other media places. I mean, it's a very different thing hosting when you're, rather than being the recipient of questions, is it not?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, getting to go on some of the bigger car podcasts is always super fun, and going and sometimes seeing their studio or seeing their setup. Yeah, I was on the Bloomberg one, been on Spike a couple times.
I've watched you on TV, buddy.
Hey, I get looped out there every once in a while. But yeah, I think the podcast format, I'm super late adopter, but I actually listen to it quite a bit now. I listen to this one, particularly the ones that I miss out on. Howard knows that one of my sort of weaknesses along the journey of BaT has been like just sort of letting go of stuff. So I would be like super jealous. Like Howard got to talk to somebody that I didn't. He got to talk to Miles Collier and I didn't. And I was like, wait a minute, like shouldn't I get to do that too? But it's super cool to actually expand beyond that insecurity and see the way that the podcast goes. So I love listening to a BaT podcast when it comes out and I'm not on it and I get to hear from other folks. It seems like it rounds it out. It's a cool experience for me.
I love that, Randy. I thought you were going to say your weakness was saying yes too much. What's awesome is you've been very generous with your time, and you're on a lot of these podcasts that are tiny and very niche, and like they are very fortunate to have you say yes to that and be kind of the featured guest for the year. They're out there. I was poking around YouTube a few months back, and it's impressive all the stuff you've done and the mitzvahs you've done for some
external
of these
ones,
guys.
or you mean the randoms on BaT, the random ones I've hosted on BaT, or you mean the external ones?
External as you as a guest, yeah.
Yeah. There's
I
some
thought we were
crazy
going to
ones.
thank him for showing up for this right now.
Thank God.
I was like, thankfully I was at the Skirmint's interview that you
Man.
can't even hear
That's
through
a highlight.
all the cat scratch audio.
Didn't they actively answer the phone?
Correct.
They
were
did.
taking
They were
business
taking
calls.
business calls during the questioning. It was awesome.
It was actually really like that. It was one of the times I've laughed the most. Like, it was me and Randy sitting right here in this room, and we were laughing so much.
At the absurdity. It was
Correct.
wonderful.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's authentic, right? That's the BaT brand. That was certainly very real.
How many remote guests have had issues setting up their audio?
I would say.
Is it more than 50%?
Is it more than when we have trouble?
I mean, we had trouble today. I won't say how that all went, but there's only one person remote, so a lot.
It happens.
Enough such that like
Tech is a pain.
they do. I think
Audio tech is a pain. That's why there's pros that get well paid.
we've scrubbed episodes. We've had to scrub it before, right? There's real technical difficulties to doing this. Randy and I were just down in LA recording a couple, and like doing it remotely is interesting and can be tricky. And the audio quality is hard to keep, it's hard to have high fidelity when you're in Magnus Walker's shop and he doesn't want to wear headphones. It's like tough.
Nice humble brag in there.
Well, I didn't say about who did that, but that did occur.
I remember the one I was thinking of, which is why Randy is such a great individual. He did the classic Auto Mall podcast, which
Wow.
is buried deep somewhere on the interwebs. And it was awesome. That guy's awesome, loves BaT. And It's very
I was
funny.
actively trying to sell me a Myers Manx during the podcast. I thought that was pretty solid. I didn't get it done, but he got the deal done like later that day. He's like, you missed out. You should have bought it live while recording.
You were thinking about it, though, I bet.
I love Myers Manx.
I know you do.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't get that one.
Howard, relatively early on, you interviewed Bill Osterly, rest in peace, a person who was a power BAT seller, but also just kind of a notable name. I was wondering if you might talk about him a little bit. I don't think he's come up on the podcast recently.
Yeah, I sure did. Thanks for reminding me of that, Alex. He, Billo 317, unfortunately, he passed away this year. He was the co-founder of Angie's List, which some folks may recognize, and just an awesome dude. Had one of the most eclectic tastes in cars. He had the 77 Indy 500 winner. He was a big MGA twin cam guy. He liked Duesenbergs. He sold, he probably actually bought more than he sold, but he sold a good portion of his collection with us starting in 2014, first year of auctions, all the way up until posthumously. He still sold a few cars, his team and family. So he was a special dude. I got to meet him in person in December 2019. I remember vividly. We had an amazing dinner at Elmo's, which we actually then had a BAT staff dinner there when we went to the Indy Motor Speedway for an alumni gathering a few years later. But yeah, Alex, Billo 317, RIP. That guy was an absolute beauty, and they don't make him like that anymore, as they say.
Great dude, great BAT user.
He showed up at the Indy alumni gathering. I shook his hand. I remember that vividly. He was fighting a health battle at that point, but he was a good dude, man. Early username to go check auctions. I mean, he was
Totally.
We were like, who is this dude that wants to sell all these cars on BAT? He was very active early on.
Early supporter, as was Myron Vernus, right? Another guy that you've interviewed on here, Randy. Another kind of.
We had Myron about the book.
The book.
Yes.
Quiet Greatness.
I was just looking at that. It's on our shelf downstairs. That's an awesome book that he was involved with.
I loved it so much that I also bought a copy. I loved it.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Every time I have to leave it on the bedside table in our guest room because my dad wants to read it every time. He just wants to go to the Cosmo page and the Toyota 2000 GT
That's
page.
cool.
Zach, what were some other early memories or early appearances that you had on the podcast? You were on quite a bit, I think, talking about events and maybe some drives.
Man, just hanging with you guys. I like how well we can replicate the office atmosphere on this. That's most of the fun for me. So maybe it's selfish, but hopefully a few people out there actually enjoy listening to this.
It's my favorite thing. If I could, I would do this.
Banter, jokes, unwind, a little bit of inside baseball, a little bit of what's piquing your interest on the site. It's a good mix.
Totally. Other notable ones, Howard? Any other guests that popped to mind? You've interviewed quite a few people. I remember enjoying the Chubba Chet interview a lot. That was really enjoyable. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Chubba was good. That was fairly recent. Other wild cards, Paul Gentilozzi, Trans Am legend. We were riffing about 80s races, Dorsey Schrader, all those greats. If you were into that stuff way back when, that was before my time, but I got into it as a kid, and that was just a lot of those races. You can still watch them on YouTube, flag to flag.
Little teaser, Howard. I just interviewed Tommy Kendall, so that's a teaser for folks listening coming up.
TK, yeah, he's a great dude. You did that in the last week, huh?
Yeah, very recently.
Is he on speaking terms with Gentilozzi, or those guys are
totally.
fist fight? If they see each other, it's a fist fight.
Throw a helmet.
Totally.
Well, TK was the next generation. He was the young buck that was kind of coming up when those guys were at the end of their careers, and then TK dominated in the 90s. And Alex, I'm sure you are up on this more than I am, given you just talked to him. But he's around events. You can see him at Laguna and Sonoma and West Coast when stuff's happening. But he's a cool guy. He dominated.
You love somebody who dominates, Howard. Randy, any other notable ones for you, or ones that you really remember, funny memories that you have?
Honestly, I need to go back and look at the list. All these names you guys are fishing out. I'm like, oh man, that was a long time ago. But no, just getting to 100 is an interesting milestone. They say it takes a while before something's like truly a habit, and then for me, listening is like a full on habit now. I like when we try to do it remote. I've admired you for going to these places and going to these guys' garages and setting up an audio deal and hitting record, and these people start talking. I think that's awesome. I haven't done much of that, but we should do more of that. We should do some on site. I did enjoy the New York alumni event where we've done it on site at an alumni event. I thought that was pretty neat. Hearing almost like a panel discussion on a podcast format, audio format. We got some good feedback on that one. And I think some people liked it.
My wife even listened to that one all the way through. I know. So that tells you something. That was like one of her favorite ones, was listening to the panel discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing
The great Reggie Jackson also was a good app. Worth a
That's
listen.
what you got that I was jealous of. You were talking about the Yankees and stuff, and I was nowhere to be found. Man,
I went to the Yankees World Series game 2 months ago and texted Reggie. He was right back to me. I said, "We're in your old house, and what's up?" And he's around.
amazing.
Awesome.
One thing I just wanted to say, Alex, is what an amazing job you've done at evolving the format of the podcast. And a big reason why we're so consistent and up and coming in our success is because of you and your evolution as a host. So thanks for rallying us to keep doing this. And yeah, to Randy's point, thanks for traveling around and talking to all these people.
Oh man,
so
I appreciate you saying
along those lines, what's been most memorable for you?
Oh man, Zach, thanks for turning the mic back on me. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Chris Baxter, our friend and the producer of the podcast, is a huge part of what's made it successful.
Has he put that on his LinkedIn? Podcast producer?
I mean,
that sounds very
kind of
solid.
like me. He's had to learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked memorable moments. Sweating bullets for an hour with Peter Egan, my car hero, while I'm trying to figure out our remote setup.
Why the sweat? Why did you feel so stressed?
Because I couldn't figure out how to set up, the remote recording equipment.
That's a terrible feeling.
Oh, dude. And he's just waiting for you. And he's so patient. And you want the day to go so perfectly. And it did go amazingly. And I took him and Barb out to dinner and he signed some of Randy's books.
And where was dinner that night?
I looked up just like I figured they would want kind of like a homey. I tried to imagine what the kind of meals are like that he would write about. So we found kind of a homey American Italian restaurant.
Amazing.
They were on holiday in SoCal though, right?
Correct.
You went to SoCal.
Orange County. They were in Orange County.
Love it.
We tried to do it from Wisconsin and they were like, the internet's not going to be up for. Oh, actually, that's a memorable moment. It's Colin Comer. Randy and I had to start and stop recording with Colin Comer about 15 times because his internet.
Because of home internet. Yeah.
Remember that?
That happens. That was still a fun conversation though.
Yeah. I thought Comer would have good Wi-Fi.
He moved from like a barn to a house and it got better. And again, Chris Baxter, shout out, God love him. He stitched all the recordings together. You can barely hear that it was like 15 different starts and stops. Amazing.
So for you interviewing all these people in the last couple of years, do you think has it impacted your automotive taste or interest at all?
I mean, like you, Zach, my favorite thing is sitting around BSing with you guys. Like this is the kind of episode I would do every time if I could. It's my favorite, but I think people really like the interviews and we really want folks to hear from our community members and our power sellers and interesting automotive names. But, not particularly the game that we've been playing, the 1 Year Garage, has shifted my thinking in a couple of ways about certain cars and years. But for the most part, not really.
I wondered if meeting Peter Egan and Bruce Meyer, if that shifted anything for you.
Makes you want a Cobra.
Yeah. A hot rod. Actually, I can't.
You want a hot rod.
I can't think of anything but not to spoil tomorrow's episode, or actually will be in the past by the time this goes live. Randy's speaking with Bruce Meyer. So I guess we can talk about it in the past tense now. We started talking hot rods, me and him and Randy, and he got kind of excited as he realized that he knew what we were talking about. And I was like, man, Bruce, I need a 3-window coupe. And he's like, here's what you need. And he trotted us down to that car and fired it up and pulled it out. And that's the only car I can think about now, Randy.
I've got it. I've got the photo right here, man. We'll have that. Oh, that was a good one.
That was a great day. Howard, have you done any remotes? I can't remember. Have you taken the equipment somewhere and interviewed people?
No, I was going to say that's a level I haven't reached, Alex. The traveling podcast roadshow. That must be nerve-wracking.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Oh, Zach,
got to deliver if you go all the way there, especially if you're hopping on a flight. You can't come back empty-handed.
Did you fly with all the podcast equipment?
Yeah, I got stopped. I got pulled over in security, and the guy's like, "What is this stuff?" And I had like my overnight bag. It was just one night, and so my bag was basically filled with the stuff we're talking into right now. And the TSA guy, this was at John Wayne Airport, where the TSA is like barely anything. So he wanted to have a conversation. I said, "It's for a podcast." He starts asking questions. I'm like, "Yeah, it's for a car thing." He's like, "Oh, bring a trailer." He's like, "I'm going to listen." So maybe we made a fan in the TSA line.
Well done, TSA fans.
Totally.
There's a username, TSA 123.
Oh, is that one of our users?
No, I'm just saying.
Totally. I'm coming for you guys.
Yep.
Zach, what about you? Has anything shifted for you? You got to do a really big interview that we should talk about. That was one of our biggest gets.
Oh, well, that one's so obvious.
Yeah, but
I don't know. Just solidifying my enjoyment of Hondas and Porsches for the most part, and hatred of late model Italian cars.
Oh, man.
There's one parked out in front for all your hatred.
Looking so sad.
Zach, I heard that you were at the Big Berkeley Cars and Coffee this past weekend with a bunch of other folks. Did I understand that correctly?
Robert and Darius both showed up as well. Robert bought a 914.
What?
Yeah.
Love that.
I know.
It's a cool one.
Who else from the auction showed up? Vince,
Beck was there with his kids. Vince, Jasper, Cam was there.
Cameron.
So shout out to a bunch of our colleagues and former colleagues. Beck had his kids. They didn't make it very long, as is usual. I've taken my kid to that before. You get about 30, 45 men.
It's a good little hang, though, right? I mean, some East Bay folks came out of the woodwork.
It's the biggest one I've ever seen. So shout out to Alex Jordan, who invites us to those and puts them on, but hasn't done one in 6 months or so. So yeah, really big turnout.
Well, that's a lot of the enjoyment for me, that it just does it kind of at random. So it keeps you on your toes, and then you're more motivated to go once it comes out.
He's such a sweetheart too.
It was
such
heavy
a nice
Benz
guy.
crowd this time, right?
Yeah.
What Benz is? Tell me.
Euro 560 SEC.
Okay.
Good bumpers.
500E.
Nice car. Yeah, 500E.
Yes.
There was the Euro 2.5 16 valve. I don't know if it's 2.5 or
Yeah,
2.3.
Camisa's car,
Yeah.
which we've been on a rally before with Zach.
Oh, right.
His gold Cosworth 190.
Yeah, it's a Cosworth 190.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, with like tartan.
I don't know if that is a 3 or a 5. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, cool.
And then the new most rapidly depreciating automobile on sale today showed up, the new Lucid SUV.
Wait, what?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm behind. I didn't know that was
about
happening
it either. And people like,
What's the model name, Zach? Need a model name.
Moment where this guy was taking a photo of what were 3 wonderfully placed yellow cars all together, walking by, getting closer and closer. Then he blows past the yellow cars, and it's very obvious he's actually just taking photos of the Lucid SUV.
It is called, I'm trying to look up the name. Somebody just had it up the other day.
Interesting. We need one of those on BAT. Let's go.
Let's sell it. Oh, gosh, what's it called? No, I can't remember what it's called.
They all have weird names. Sapphire, Air. What are they?
It has the same roof line as the Air. It's called the Gravity.
It's totally called the Gravity.
Yep. But it has, Howard, it has that same, like
it's
stainless steel roof.
Of the weight at which the value is going to drop as soon as it goes on sale.
That's going to be cut in half in the first 3 months, and then it's going to halve again.
BAT though, man, don't turn it down. That's an accept.
Oh, Randy,
that's accept. Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm showing you things on my watch list.
Yeah, that's
I just scroll the BAT app when people are talking to me. I have trouble making eye contact.
That is actually true. For anyone who listens regularly, most of the time when we have Randy, he is also multitasking and looking at his telephone, and it's always at BAT listings.
Anyone moving out of Fisker Oceans into Lucid Gravities?
Ocean, gravity, air. We've got it all.
Yeah.
It's a very zen sort of space. It's a Genesis.
X's, no Y's yet.
You don't want to talk about Cena at all? It was such a big deal.
Name drop Cena. Go for it.
Come on, Zach. You did such a nice job.
I was driving around Arizona in a rental car, listening to you guys on that podcast and loving it. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, topical, because I actually got the coolest text message of my life the other weekend. It started with, "Hi, Zach. It's John Cena."
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I gave him my social, my checking account.
Totally.
He said he's going to come hang any day now.
But it's true. I mean, it's cool that this thing that we do allows us to, you were used to that, Randy and Howard, but, Peter Egan's phone number and contact being in my phone is pretty cool, right? That's an amazing thing. I never
would have text him right now. He should say, "Hey, what you up to tonight?
I never
what do you
would
eat
have
for
thought
dinner?"
when I was 18 years old reading all his articles that he'd be in my phone. So,
yeah.
Pretty exciting stuff.
Well, it is such a good representative of the site of just people and range of diversity of audience.
All over the place.
What would John Cena and Peter Egan talk about if they gave each other a high five?
Oh, man. They may talk about this Benz replica that's coming up for sale. I don't need to blow up his spot too much, but he's got quite the collection. Is that his?
What are we talking about?
It's...
There's this secret stuff.
It's coming up. You'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
It may be past tense by the time this is live.
There's a Gullwing replica on the site. I thought that's what you were speaking of.
This is a pre-war car.
A Mercedes replica.
Interesting.
Ooh, mysterious.
Well, he had that almost perfect replica of a Diablo that his Cena did. And one of the most surprising things that Egan said when I was with him, and I can't remember if it was on the pod or not, it could have been when we were at dinner. He said that he drove a brand new Diablo across the country in 1994 for a magazine article. Him and Barb, 5,000 miles in a brand new Diablo.
Which now that you've sat in one probably means all more, right?
Dude, that would have been a task, a chore for him to complete.
Just getting in and out of that.
I had my first ride in a Diablo just a month ago.
And how was
in
that?
New York. right after our Coker Farms event, and I was not interested in it at all. I was like, get me out of here immediately. So not my jam. But yeah, that is what those two dudes would talk about, and they would high five the Diablo secret handshake
For
high
sure.
five.
Howard, you were out there as part of that driving event too, weren't you, in New York with Randy and Zach?
Which the great Sunday, me, Randy, Zach, and Sarah took out. What did we take out? 993 Turb, white Testarossa, some other
964
Porsches.
modded 964, a couple other.
Amazing.
There was a Volkswagen GTI that snuck into that. I don't know if that's official.
Yeah, right. That was a great day. We had a nice little lunch and then bombed around. Maybe did 100 miles over a couple hours, and that was fun.
Yeah, car was phenomenal until you had to go use the brakes.
Yeah, you didn't like the brakes.
Did you get along with
interestingly?
them?
Like I'm so slow. Like I don't even use the brakes. I just downshift.
Well, I just had one nice flyby by you listening to the exhaust, and then the light turned red, and I wasn't even that far back, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I might just be halfway out of the intersection.
That was interesting. I think you have nicer cars to compare it to, and I don't. Like you should go drive the Alpha outside. You'd be terrified.
Has Zach ever given you his take on the Falcon brakes?
Well, I was going to say, the Alpha doesn't have 400 horsepower, but the Falcon does.
Yeah, and it has
the
no
brakes, and those are sketchy. That's exactly what the Testarossa felt like, the Falcon.
Pretty much like a 1963 Ford.
It's pretty close.
With no power assist.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Alex, we've had a few pretty awesome vehicles that are near and dear to your heart that are alive and recently ended. Thought I'd ask your thoughts about those. One was one of the coolest bikes we've listed, which was that 32 Indy 4 that sold for a big number.
Multiple single family ownership.
That sat at like $100,000 for a while, and then where'd that finish?
135.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Alex, you're always talking about Furman 4-cam motors. We finally actually have one live. I don't know if you wrote that one yourself or had a close relationship with it, but that looks awesome.
I have 356. I follow the 356
Alerts.
page, so I got the alert for it. I edited the last Furman we had, which sold and was great. We'd had one on many, many years ago that I wrote. The last
one had some 904 bits on it, right?
Yeah, it was like a 70s rebuild when they did. It had like finned valve covers above, but then like Porsche valve covers below. It was all the speed secrets that people would do for race motors back in the day. But this one, Howard, I haven't had a chance to look at it. I just saw it pop up today. I was very excited to see it.
Listed by Parts Tech, Costa Mesa, California. It's on the site right now.
That's the place that does
cool
them.
photos.
It's got a pretty recent rebuild for one of those.
The thing looks nice from the outside. I don't know what the guts of it look like.
It's legit. There's been a lot of good stuff on the site recently. Any other specific ones you wanted to ask me about, Howard?
I mean, anytime we have a Rio Brizio street rod car on there, we got a pretty dope 34 Ford 3-window coupe.
Fantasy repping that, aren't they?
Yeah, no reserve.
So solid.
So great.
We dropped Sid Shaver's name in that listing.
Oh, interesting. But it's
Sid's Custom Interiors, which is Mountain View, California, right down by me, which I always love that he's like the worldwide hot rod interior guy and his name gets dropped on BAT. That makes me proud to be affiliated with a website that mentions
usually
Sid's
it's a BaT top. It's the removable.
But he does full interiors.
He does interiors too. And this one's a coupe. So it would have to be. That car is great, Howard.
And then, of course, we have Seinfeld's Turbo S 50th anniversary, one of one. I got to read up on how he finagled that order, but pretty neat that we're listing that in the way that we are.
Very sick car.
We've listed a lot of ex Seinfeld, but this is like he's currently owning it and selling it, which is terrific, which we appreciate from him.
Yeah, love him and love when he talks about BAT. Just bought a Fiat on the site too. Somebody was just posting.
I was in Germany and ate lunch with a dude who's, the 912 that Seinfeld talks about all the time. I don't know if you guys know this.
200, I know that car.
A huge deal, and he's totally into that car. But the seller of that car I was hanging out with, he's like, yeah, I sold that car to him.
Oh, interesting.
So I thought that was kind of strong.
It was in the U.S. when
it was in the U.S., but it went through some hands.
Yeah, it was a super original, like unrestored car. Very nice, kind of a weird spec, blue with white interior, as I recall. Anything interesting on the site recently for you, Zach?
I mean, the Subaru is pretty cool out of Europe.
Agreed.
Tell people what that is. Nobody knows what you just said. They think that's where you buy Italian food at the mall.
Mall pizza.
Yeah, it does sound like a menu item. It's kind of like an R5 evolution, right? Like if R5
like
turbo got a
R5 motor, though. Come on.
Oh yeah, it's got a Ferrari.
I think
V8
the whole thing is a 308 underneath.
So solid. We probably should have bought that car.
I know.
I mean, we still can, unfortunately. Yeah, missed reserve, but I mean, just a wild special of its day. One of the cars that comes across my desk that I didn't even know this existed till I'm looking at it now.
And one of one or one of three?
I think they made
a couple. I think I wish we could see it next to your R5 though, because it has like similar proportions.
Anyway, we also featured it in 2018, which is my favorite part of that listing.
I love it.
It may be the only one that actually got assembled. Maybe there are 3 guys out there that made deposits.
I love it.
Did you guys see the stereo?
Yes.
I mean, the
Did someone say
stereo
it's
is
Clarion?
It is a Clarion.
Yeah, it's a Clarion setup.
It's like a 4-level deck stereo with an active equalizer. And oh man, it's
one-off.
It would be
hatchback.
cool
It's
here.
one. You're right. One of one.
I also like that they still have the Ferrari VIN on the steering wheel, like just on the hub that it mounts to.
I think it's just body, but not just body work, but it's mainly body work. I think it's mainly a 308 underneath.
That's a weird car.
Super cool car. Would love to see it next to an R5 because it's got to be bigger. It's got to be like an R5 and a half kind of.
Yeah, R5's better. R5's better looking, at least. I don't know if it's better. The Ferrari V8 in an R5 sort of packaging is astonishing and would be fun to play around with, but
I don't know. This thing's probably sketchy. It's a transverse V8 and a hatchback with a short wheelbase. Randy's the only one with the courage to drive this thing.
I would putter that around and not use the brakes, just like I do on my cars.
I'm this auction will be over by the time this podcast goes live, and I'm semi scared to bring this up to Randy again. I talk about my 300G love, but did you see the 61 New Yorker wagon?
I'm miles ahead of you. I did see it. And is it an alumni car?
RNM a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was on a couple of years ago.
Back again. It's up in Calistoga. Did you see that car, Howard?
I saw it.
I don't think so.
It's I didn't even know this existed. So it looks like a 61 300G Chrysler, but it's the New Yorker version, and it's a pillarless wagon. This is black over red. It's so freaking good. It has the same steering wheel of 300. And did you see the driver's seat is like asymmetrical?
Yes.
It's like higher for the driver. Oh
yes.
man, it's so
I was
good. Did you see
confused by
car,
that, but it worked.
I'm very, very much in favor of that.
There was
car.
a car that went through the other week that I'm going to be kicking myself for a long time for not getting.
What is it?
Did you guys see the Honda Vamos?
Yes, and it sold for 10 grand even.
10 grand. And it was in California.
I don't even know what that is. Show it to me. I don't even know what that is.
It's the perfect little work truck, runabout, throw trash in the back.
We should have bought that.
I'm pretty bummed, honestly. I would love this thing.
Is the engine in the back or in the front?
The engine, I think it's below
under the deck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That at Berkeley Cars and Coffee, you'd be a like Birkenstock wearing hero.
Totally. Park it right over next to the Lucid. The two of you are the stars of the show.
Totally.
Autopilot probably doesn't even recognize this and just plows through it.
That would be amazing.
I really liked I think this was also an alumni car. There was a original Ford GT blue with no stripes. I'm like, no stripe.
600 grand it went for?
Good.
Oh my god.
That was an alumni car too. It sold
correct.
a year or two ago.
No reserve again. People coming in strong with the no reserve game.
Yeah, you guys, I don't know if you're negotiating that or if people walk straight in the door with it, but there's been a lot of cars I'm like, wow, at no reserve? That's fantastic. Like
people get it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it gets more bids. So I think they're smart. Once you got the confidence, you just roll in with that stuff. There is an Oldsmobile Cutlass NASCAR Skull Bandit race car on the website right now. Did you see it?
I have not seen it, but there was some me and TK, a little bit of Skull Bandit talk.
Come on.
Randy, that is like the number one.
It's the car.
Did you guys see the 85 RX-7 rally car?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I saw that. I didn't look into the history on it, though. What was the deal? Did it run?
That's your guy, Greg Blue, right, Howard?
Yeah, that was G Blue. That was a legit car. I don't think it ever really raced, but it was a legit RX-7 factory group B car, and
it had all the
excited about it.
Pretty sure I also talked to TK about that car. He was watching that one. He's a BAT fanatic.
Is he really? Oh, that's
totally.
Great. I like that.
Totally. His user account is really interesting because he has his old IMSA RX-7, and he's like, this Group B car is so cool. The one problem with it is it's so nice, Howard, to your point, because it never raced that you almost wouldn't want to vintage race it. It's like in really nice original condition. Oh, really?
I can't not acknowledge the Montana plates with a car located in Hawaii.
Oh,
that's a tough one to explain when you get pulled over.
But he did his sick standard Greg Blue video where he's whipping it up a road in flip flops in Hawaii, and I'm just like,
he sold Shelby once. Was he
65 Shelby?
He
right,
sold
Howard?
some stuff out of Hawaii, hasn't he? He's that guy.
Yeah, the race car that had the 328 engine in it.
I don't recall that.
Oh yeah, it looked like the rally car that you and I like so much. It was kind of a clone of those.
How about you, Howard? What's been catching your eye?
Oh man, I mean, there's very few instances where I will allow the use of the word unicorn, but that Evo 9 MR with no miles that we sold that went nuts at 160 or 170. That was cool.
You were grinding a reserve like much lower than that, back and forth, and then it went like to the moon, effectively.
Interestingly, we had sold a car with similar miles 2 or 3 years ago for 80. So that one sold for exactly double 3 years later. Impossible to say if that's the new market reset, but that was just one of those auctions where the bid chime was going off for 30 minutes after the scheduled end time. And that was pretty neat.
Fantastic.
Well, surprisingly, it's going to Canada.
Huh.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a good Canada car. Hide it away, probably. I mean, you pay that much. What are they just going to bubble wrap it?
I sort of respect the move of paying 161 grand for this just to drive a brand new Evo into the ground. Put like
I really respect miles on a no mile car. Just like be the first owner and go actually use it for the next 40,000.
Totally. I just feel like it's what it's like to own a new one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know if any of you clocked this one. Howard, you probably did, but the Frua AC Coupe with the 428.
Yeah,
Anybody see that?
Silver car.
Didn't sell, sadly.
It got close, but yeah, no deal. That's our boy Harry Clark, Zach.
We had a Wob had a Roadster.
Yes, that's right. The green
version
one.
of that with a 4-speed. This
I
was
saw
an
that car in
automatic,
person.
but the coupe is really cool looking. It's weird, but I really like it.
Unusual. Mm-hmm.
I love it in 60s and 70s cars when they have the automatic shifter that looks like the throttle, where it's two vertical parts.
Yeah,
it's got one
throttle
of those.
to it like an airplane.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, that's why you like it. I love that. That's cool.
I like that.
We can't seem to sell 2022 Countach LP 804s, but I love those things, and we'll keep listing them. We're going to sell one eventually.
I thought 2 of them missed. I like those.
We've had some good results on Countachs in general, though, recently.
Yeah, then the vintage model for sure.
Sorry, you're
He's
talking about the one
2022.
It's like an Aventador rebodied. Yeah,
People are having trouble coming to grips with market value on those, but that's okay.
We've at least gotten all those folks really solid bids, Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Right, 2.5 on some of them.
We sure have. Next pod's going to be our affordable late model sports cars, Alex. I'm pumped for that. I got a whole list.
I have a whole idea for how to do that one. Go ahead, Rich.
Is the Renault Alliance GTA 5-speed included on the affordable sports car list built in 1987? We just sold one of those for $7,000.
It certainly should be.
I think it was
Is
awesome.
the Maserati Kalami on there?
Kyalami.
I'm not saying that right, am I?
I think it's Kyalami. Which is
it's racetrack.
To go back to the podcast, not to retread what we were talking about at the beginning, but you interviewed Kobus, and he had all these articles he's done where he's at Kyalami as a kid. I edited a bunch of those posts back in the day, where those amazing photos,
Did
Kobus is a great human.
They made 75 across 4 years.
Show me.
I actually really like them. They're like so plain Jane.
Weird.
I know, they're super weird.
It's like a sports K car kind of.
Yep. And part of their thing where they name all the cars after racetracks, right?
Yep.
Any other results? Anything else you want to talk about?
Man, there's so much on the site. We could just go and go and go. People are like,
save some
mercy.
Totally.
No, we can talk about the other pods that are either coming out or that we have in the works. You're the master of ceremonies here, Alex. What do you want to tip people off to?
So by the time this goes live, episode 199 will have been Bruce Meyer, which was just a delight for Randy and I. The whole experience was amazing. He was such a gracious host and just an amazing conversation. So folks will have the opportunity to listen to that when this is live. And then coming up, we have Keith Martin. Howard had a delightful chat with Keith. That will be episode 101 or 102. And then, we've said a couple times, Tommy Kendall. So those ones are in the can already coming up. And we have a couple other interesting interviews queued up. So I'm really looking for that. Nicole Johnson, YouTube star, former Monster.
Is that right? Cool.
She's going to come here and record in person, which is
awesome.
rare. And I think will be really cool. Her YouTube content is awesome. She's a former monster truck driver too, which is cool. Definitely want to grill her about that.
We should put that on Chris Baxter's LinkedIn. I love that.
Booked a monster truck driver as podcast guest.
No, am monster truck driver. That's what you got to have on your resume. It's amazing.
I took my kiddos to a monster truck rally recently indoors at the place where we saw the Warriors play, like right over here.
Chase Center?
They drove inside Chase Center with Monster Jam?
Back flips, front flips, crushing cars.
You told me you went to that. I forgot it was indoor. I went to the outdoor one most recently, and most recently means 10 years ago. But awesome entertainment.
Kids loved it. They were going nuts. It was awesome.
I did a little interview with ABC earlier this week that was marketed originally as being about adventure vehicles and the post-COVID interest in getting out into the wilderness. So I was all pumped to talk about, Earth Roamer conversions and tricked out Sprinter vans.
Interest you personally have about getting out into the wilderness and talk all about your Manhattan apartment.
But then we signed on, and it turns out that the reporter just wanted to talk about new like Lexus GXs and the new Defender. So I was trying to angle it towards more adventure-esque. But
the new GXs are cool though. Have you guys seen it yet?
I love one. I actually think that's what I want my wife to get, the new GX 550.
Great, yeah. Us and the ABC reporter, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
She just wanted to talk lucid gravities, Howard.
Ooh, you could mix that in a little bit. That would be good. Those vehicles are cool. I'm actually a believer in the new Defender now. I think I told you guys that. I'm converted all of a sudden.
I like it too.
I think we're good.
This is great.
Good stuff on the site and interesting stuff to come through the holidays.
Well, what a treat to have done all these podcasts with you guys. And I hope we can keep it up for another 100 or another 500. And for those of you listening, we would like to hear what you want us to talk about or who you want us to interview for those next 100, 200, 500 podcasts. Please reach out to podcast@bringatrailer.com with feedback. Thanks for listening, and we will see you soon.